Ми раді вітати всіх, хто до нас вже долучився, і хочу звернути
We are
увагу,
happy to greet everyone who has already joined us.
і також хочу зазначити, що у нас
And I would like
синхронний
to
переклад.
note that we have simultaneous interpreting on.
Щоб обрати необхідну вам мову,
To
оберіть, будь
choose
ласка,
the
три
language, please
крапки на вашому екрані,
choose three dots
або ж глобус, і оберіть
or
необхідну
globe
вам мову.
and choose the relevant language.
So may I continue my talking, or do I need to stop for, you said it was simultaneous translation, so I can just keep talking and it's translated as I speak. Yeah, okay.
Yes, you can keep talking, yeah.
Okay, so just tell me when to start.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for inviting me to you in Ukraine. I know it's through Zoom, but seeing you all, I have a very good sense of being there. I wish I was there, actually. It's a place I've always wanted to see. I have some Ukrainian friends here in Ireland. So I'm going to start with the agenda. So it's all on PowerPoint. And I will stop whenever it's necessary. If Ilana needs to contact me, or Ivana needs to contact me, just shout if you think I'm talking too fast and it's difficult for you to catch up, okay?
Yes.
So just a moment. I need to move down your recording bar because I can't get into my top of my PowerPoint. Let me just see if I can manage it this way. Just want to open up the full slideshow. And then I will expand again. So, can you all see that? The two parties and yeah.
Yes.
That's great. If you nod your head, that's perfect. Thank you. So, and let me move some of these things out of my own way.
Yes, Gerry, I think we can start the
Okay.
lecture. Yes.
There is, what's the recording, I think. Get rid of that. Okay, so what I'm going to do today, I'm not showing any long films because it's probably a little bit too difficult with the need to translate, but I will be showing one very short clip for about just 2 minutes, so we can manage that slowly. So I'm going to outline the communication context in which we mediators work while we're trying to create a paradigm shift in the thinking of our mediation participants. And all of what I cover today can be used outside of mediation with the general family or in your workplace, okay? I'm going to briefly introduce and describe the purpose and focus of the S questions model. And then I come to the main two parts of the training. One is to describe thought flow tracking and to explain what I mean by that. And the second main part is the methodology for asking difficult questions in a safe and non-threatening way. So can I just check with the translator, am I going slow enough for you?
Шановні перекладачі.
Okay.
Yes, it is okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for your feedback.
So,
A monkey business illusion.
Just
count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half miss the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla. And there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold.
Не, я выключил уже.
You're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
Okay, I just I know in in-person training, 50% of people don't see the gorilla. And on online, I'm discovering it's probably nearer 70% that see the gorilla and 30% don't. But the thing that people are quite shocked by is if they see the gorilla, they cannot understand how anyone could possibly miss it. And if they don't see the gorilla, they just don't understand how you could possibly miss, because it's quite a large gorilla. You really can't miss it. So what I'm going to do now is explain why it is that we miss important things like that, or many things, when we're communicating. And it will explain to you why you would have missed the gorilla if you were one of the percentage that did miss it. So the first slide, I want to show you how little information our brain absorbs and how it can be distorted as well as deficient. Okay, so I'm going to take these three factors one by one. The amount is one of the factors, the amount we have the capacity to absorb. The type of information we absorb is dependent on our experiences, values, and beliefs. And then when we are absorbing that information, the emotions that come up for us when our brain is absorbing information cause even more deficit and distortion. So first, let me just look at the amount of information. At any 1 second, there are 11 million bits of information available to us, but we only process approximately 40 bits per second. And you might say, but surely I don't see 11 bits of information per minute. But if you just look at a room, you look at the carpet, how many threads are in the carpet? What are the colors? What's the pattern? Is the pattern repeating? There are so many pieces of information, and yet we only take in 40 bits out of the 11 million. Okay, the second factor is the type of information that we take in. And that's based on our experiences, our values and beliefs. So we have all been, can I use the word, manufactured as children? We've all been manufactured totally different to each other, okay? And everything we do is informed by our opinions. Everything is informed by our values, our beliefs, and our experiences. And I just want to give you a brief example. It's from the Soccer World Cup in, I don't know, was it 2003? It's when for the first time we got to the quarterfinal, and it was just the most exciting thing for everybody. But our captain walked out and he left the team, and he left. It was like the Civil War we had 100 years ago, all over again. People were either thinking that Roy Keane did the correct thing, or absolutely ferocious everywhere, on the street, in the bars, everywhere. Everyone was talking about Roy Keane. And I began to realize at that time that people took really strong views, and I started to think, how could this be? And during training, when I trained mediators, I began to find out, because I would use this example and ask them, what was it about the way they were reared, or they were, as I say, manufactured, that led them to take such a strong stance? And everyone's stance was based on a value or a belief. It could be a value like, you stick with your team. And as children, they would have heard, you stick with the family, you commit to us, you know, even if we're wrong, you stand by us, don't tell anybody else, don't walk away from us. Or someone else might say on the other side, he was right to leave because her value base from home was, you need to work hard, you need to aim high, and you need to just go there and never, ever give up, even if you're wrong. So it just, I suppose, I just wanted to give you that example. And if you look at, I don't know how the COVID restrictions were in Ukraine, but we had a lot of lockdown here, and then there were vaccinations, and then there were people who were refusing to get vaccinated. And again, luckily we couldn't really talk to each other very much, because it then broke down, I could see afterwards, into a real value base. Was our value about, I need to be independent, we need to be free, we need to make our own decisions? Or was our value around, we need to protect each other, we need to mind our older people, we need to mind the community? So just another example of how values inform everything. And as I said, our beliefs and our experiences, be they. So the third factor, and this is one that's really, I think, important for mediation. Excuse me. The third factor is the emotions that surface for us when our brain is absorbing incoming information. Okay. So if we detect that what is happening is going to make me vulnerable, or if what is happening I strongly disagree with, what can often happen is our amygdala here in the red dot in the middle, or when that is triggered by a perceived threat or a stimulus, then the oxygen and the glucose necessary for cognitive, rational, logical thinking is diverted from the frontal brain here. This is our logical, rational part of our brain. And the oxygen, the glucose there is diverted to serve the amygdala until it soothes down. But unfortunately, when we are without the oxygen and the glucose in our frontal, logical, rational brain, we are unable to think clearly. So there is no point in ever asking a mediation participant or someone who is angry what it is that they think might fix the problem, because if they have been sufficiently triggered, they would be unable to think clearly. So don't ask someone who's angry what it is they think can fix it until you hear them and have had an opportunity to express some of that anger. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So we are hardwired to notice negative information before positive information. And that happens because our amygdala is our threat detector, and it is what protects us. It's what prepares us for something awful that might be going to happen, or something frightening, or something dangerous. Hardwired to see negative information before positive information. It means that many of our thoughts are absolutely covered in negativity, and there has been very little room for us to see any positivity. So we might see one aspect of one person being angry, but we won't see the positive aspects of that person. And sorry, before I go on, and our role as mediators is to be aware of this, so that we never ever assume that we know anything, that we never assume that the party understands completely what we're saying. And certainly we need to know that the party's misunderstanding could have come from a situation where either or both were in the panic mode and they were unable to see or think clearly. And so that's about opening up the stories and asking questions and so on, okay? Sorry, there's one thing I wanted to tell you. When I was a child, about 7 or 8, my dad used to help me with my mathematics. And I used to get really when I couldn't understand understand. And I remember he used to say to me, now when you're all worked up, calm down. And my dad, how he knew then what neuroscience is now actually proving to us and giving us evidence, but he had some sense that if you're all worked up and panicky, you can't think straight. So not alone are we distorting and deleting information when we're taking it, when our brain is absorbing it, but also when we speak to others. That's also when it can cause a problem, because we tell them what we think they need to hear. We make assumptions about what they already know. And so when we start speaking, we are deleting, distorting, and generalizing information all over again. So just to sum up on that, okay? We are working within the context of a massive amount of information deficit. Just the summary. Our values and beliefs and experiences form our paradigm. They influence our perceptions, which contribute to the type of information we absorb, okay? The emotions that surface for us when our brain is absorbing may activate a threat response that could influence our capacity to think clearly. And I absolutely love this conclusion. On a final note, between what I think, what I wish to say, what I think I'm saying, what I actually say, and what you wish to hear, what you actually hear, what you understand, and I could keep going, there are at least 10 plus reasons why we may have difficulty communicating, but let's try anyway. And I don't know if you guys are often asked, are you amazed at the amount of conflict that's just within your local community and families? And I always say I am amazed at how little there is when I now know what exactly happens when our brain is absorbing information and when we're communicating with others. So I just want to tell you on my website, if you go to up here, video resources at the top, it's o'sullivansolutions.ie. I'm sure it must be the end of the slides or somewhere. It is. It's at the end of all the slides. I'll show you in a moment. If you go to mediation training video resources, and in the top row, you will see this one, okay? And it's called, creating a context. It's here, video training online, the communication context in which we work. Now that has a much longer version of it's a 26-minute film of what I've just shared with you if you want to look at it afterwards. But for now, I want to talk about Steve Covey. I don't know if you've ever read his book. Sorry. It's called The Step and a Half.
Yes, I have.
You have it. Brilliant. Well, you may have read the
Brilliant.
story.
Yeah.
Wonderful. You may have heard the story or read it already. He was traveling in New York. He was on a train, and it's one of the trains like we have. I don't know what's in Ukraine, where there's a table in the middle and there's two people on one side. You're nodding your head, Tatiana, the same, and two people on the other side. So across the way from him was what was he presumed to be the father of two children. The father was looking out the window, and the two children were running up and down the aisle of the train, and they were knocking people's coffee and bumping into people and, you know, shaking their newspapers, and generally very badly behaved. And Steve Covey was becoming more and more and more and more angry. And eventually he could stand it no longer. So he said to the father, he said, "Excuse me, sir, I don't know if you're aware that your children are causing chaos on the train." And the man just looked up as if he had come from a dream, and he said, "Oh my God," he said, "I had no idea." He said, "I had no idea what was happening." He said, "We have just come from the hospital where their mother has died. And I don't know what to do, and I'm sure that they don't know what to do either." Okay, so what happened with Steve Covey is he had what we call a paradigm shift. It's like the chicken coming out of the egg. It surely must happen when babies are born as well, except they don't see very well, but it must be, oh my God, everything has changed. Where am I now? This is a paradigm shift. And in mediation, what we're trying to do is create a paradigm shift, a change in the thinking of mediation participants, so that they start to understand themselves and each other, and then change their perspective and their approach to the conflict. Okay. And there are many ways in which we can do that, but suffice to say, for the moment, there is no point in two mediation participants coming into a mediation room with their thoughts and their beliefs the very same, and their feelings the very same, negative, they're in the positional level. If they're coming to the room like that, and if they leave like that without any change, nothing is going to work. So in that space between when they come in and when they leave, you are trying to somehow create a paradigm shift in their thinking and therefore in their approach to the conflict. So how do we do that? There are many ways, but just very, very briefly. Actually, in my book, the English version, it's mainly taken up with 8 different types of questions for creating paradigm shifts in how people think. But what we need to do as a mediator, just as a summary, we need to clarify existing information and not assume that when someone says the word water, that they mean exactly the same as I do when I say water. And I do this exercise, which I can't do with so many people now, but I ask people to think, when I say the water, what's the first thing that comes to your head? And they say rain, wet, shower, thirsty, drink, the sea, river. They say so many things. So you need to know that when it's a simple word like water, that people have a completely different perspective. Nobody says that what you call the chemical table, can't remember what the name of it is from my school, but it's H2O plus impurities. Is that I think it's the chemical formulation of water. Nobody ever answers that question. So we need to absolutely ask about what we know, about what we don't know, and about what we don't know, we don't know. And one of the simple ways of doing that is by asking, what is it that I may not know? What is it that you think is really important that I know about your particular conflict? So ask about what you don't know, you don't know. The second thing, we need to ask questions about the words that people use and about their thinking, and that's the next part of the session. I'll cover it then. And then we need to ask questions from the S questions model, which I'm going to show you in a moment, to facilitate them to look at their situation or the conflict from different perspectives. We need to ask questions that are exploratory and gently challenging so that they're made that little bit more safe. And I will show you how to do that in the afterthought flow tracking. So just briefly, this is the S questions model. This is the subject matter. These are the structure. This is the seeking information question. And you know all of those from your own training, but these are the main part of the book, these S4 shift thinking questions. I just want to show you that was my answer to what I've just told you previously in the presentation so far. Okay, sorry, they're the 8. They have a different slide to bring them up. Okay, so thought flow tracking. Okay, we can, okay, so I've been showing you the communication context and how much information we just don't absorb or that we miss when we're both hearing and when we're speaking. I've talked about the need to create a paradigm shift, but we cannot create a paradigm shift unless we know what's going on in someone's head. And I don't know if you feel your head is ever like this, but mine is quite often like this. It's just full of everything. Don't ask me anything new. Don't ask me to do anything new until I have all of these sorted into their different places in my brain. So we have to create space for our mediation participants to think through their thoughts. Okay, so no, I haven't forgotten anything. Okay, so I have not covered this in the book because I actually thought people were very good listeners if they were trained mediators. But slowly, excuse me, and I thought I was one too, but slowly from doing this training online, I've discovered that people have a little toolbox containing the questions they use a lot. They're default questions. And I know one of my default questions is nearly always to ask, what was that like for you? Okay. But I've discovered it's not helping anyone to stay on the thought flow track if I'm asking them a feeling question. All right. So we need to create that space, as I said, for them to think through their thoughts with a tiny little nudge from us. And we do that through thought flow tracking. And then we reflect back and we ask questions based not on our thinking, but on their thinking, okay? So I'm just going to show you briefly what it is, and then I'll show you what it is people do that's not quite thought flow tracking. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the questions, it's just at the time when you need to bring someone through a thought flow process, then you don't ask them, what was that like for you? Like I used to do myself, okay? I'm going to show you how to listen effectively. And it is so simple. But the hardest thing about it, always I see in role plays that we do online with Fishbowl, always the hard thing about it is do, okay? So I just want to take something down here now. That's the hardest part. So we need to listen to the words used by a person. We reflect back really succinctly the exact words they use, unless there's a toxic word there, which we can detox or reframe. And then we ask simple questions. So about those exact words, I want to show you briefly what I've discovered people do, okay? They ask questions about the context, okay? So just taking the example, Paula says, I saw the company newsletter and I couldn't believe what I saw written in it by that woman. This is a woman complaining about her colleague at work. So we can ask things, or we usually ask things about, was that before or after the other incident? Or what was your relationship like at the time? And what else was going on at the time? And you can see how the train is here at a crossroads and just doesn't know which question to ask. And what you've actually done is you've blocked the progression of their thinking instead of helping them, okay? They ask analytical questions. So they say, well, what started all this? Or what do you think caused her to say this? Or could there be something else going on? And again, you've stopped them continuing their thought flow process. Investigation. Can you tell me exactly what you saw? Did anybody else see it? Has this happened to you before? And again, you're absolutely blocking the thought flow process with those investigative questions. The judgmental questions, of course, we never ask. It's how sure who done before this? So we never ask judgmental questions anyway, but sometimes people do. And these are so popular. Feelings. How are you feeling about it? How did it impact you? And my one is here. What was that like for you? Or what was the worst thing about it? Great, you ask them, but not when you're trying to find out what they're thinking, okay? Not yet, later. And the second most popular are up there with feelings are solutions. What needs to happen? How might this be addressed? What do you need to make it work? And you've already learned that there is no point in asking a question of someone as to how they need to fix their problem when they haven't even solved in their own head what the real problem is, because we haven't given them space to do it, okay? So that's okay, that's just a summary. And those questions, those 6, if any of you know any others, please let me know so I can add them to the list. Okay, and when you ask any of those thought flow derailment questions, this is where the poor train goes. Okay, so again, back to this is what you need to do. And I always bring up, if I'm presuming people can still see me there. Thomas the Tank Engine is it's in the UK actually. It's not an Irish train, it's a UK train, and I just use him as an example. You listen to the words. You reflect them back succinctly and really briefly, and then you ask a simple question. Sometimes you don't even say anything between the first station here, listen to the words. After that, you can just leave a silence. And everything you're doing, its purpose is to just give the slightest, tiniest little nudge to the train so that their thoughts continue on the track they need to go. All right. So you're lawyers, okay? So remember, okay, having trained lawyers, I know the situation. You're not looking for evidence, right? You're not looking for who's right or wrong. You're literally keeping them on their track, all right? So this is, don't know what I need to say this, but I have it here anyway, just in case. So we're back to Paula. I saw the company newsletter and I couldn't believe what I saw written by that woman. Now I've put 4 of those words in red because I think they're the important ones. And whatever sequence I use, I need to ask everything about those 4 words, all right? So I listen and I'm absolutely in the moment with Paula, completely in the moment. And then I reflect back her words very slowly. Paula, I hear you saying you saw the company newsletter and you mentioned you couldn't believe what you saw written in it by Jenny. I'm giving that woman a name because I know her name, okay? I'm not going to call her that woman as well because then I appear as being partial. And then I'm asking simple questions. Simple questions. You mentioned you couldn't believe what Jenny wrote in the newsletter with a question mark. And I'm literally, can you tell me a little more? Okay, I'm literally just nudging along, all right? I can show you more simple questions in a moment. So I'm in the moment. I need to allow them finish their thoughts. This is so important, all right? Quite often I know when I started mediating first, I went in with 3 pages of questions for the beginning, for the middle, for the end. I had them spend hours putting them together. And I'd come home after the mediation and I wouldn't have looked at the questions and I'd have complained to myself and said, why didn't you look at the questions? You forgot to look at them again. And I did it again and again and again until I began to realize I didn't need to look at them. It wasn't about my questions that I had already developed before I went into the room. My questions needed to be about what I was hearing. And that's what I seem to have been doing organically without realizing it, but I kept thinking I have to write out these questions. The questions will come if you listen properly. So allow them to finish their thoughts. Don't jump in with your question. If you start asking a question before they finish their thoughts, then that question is all about you. It's not about them, all right? At the start, reflect back succinctly and briefly, okay? But as you continue on the thought flow track and you're slowly taking them along the track, you don't reflect back long sentence, because that would derail them and you'd sound like a robot. You could just maybe say something like, afraid? You're afraid? Or nothing. Sometimes silence is needed because they've just said those words, and I'll tell you why in a moment, why it's important to leave that silence. They've just said those words and it's the first time they've said them, verbalize them to anyone, so they need to think about them. So leave silences, okay? And get out of your own way. How often when mediation students are going for assessment, they say, oh, what's your last piece of advice? And I always say, just get out of your own way, because getting in your own way with your own thoughts and feelings is going to ensure that you're not listening. However, as I said, as you go further along the track, you say less and less and less. But if significant new information is voiced, then you need to reflect back that full sentence again, okay? And you may need to test the questions out at a separate meeting. So these are the simple questions. You'll have it on the recording. Tell me a little bit more. Tell me about what were you thinking? What was it that? Tell me about your thoughts. Just, you can go through those at your ease later. I'm not coming to use it. I just want to come to the results, okay? This is the proof that it's so important to give people space to talk about what they want to talk, not about what you think they should talk about, or not asking them questions that are based on your interpretations, okay? So our emotions are based on our thoughts, and when a participant is supported to follow their own thought flow track, not our one, they need to choose which words to use and in what order those words will be delivered so they can get their message across clearly, all right? And in order to be able to do that, they have to engage the prefrontal cortex that I showed you at the beginning. So they'll have come out of the amygdala threat place if you start asking them questions that help them to develop their thoughts along the track. Okay, and if they have to choose the words to use and which order in which they're going to deliver them, it means they've started to think more rationally and clearly. Unconscious thinking becomes conscious when it's expressed verbally, and this can impact a change in the thoughts as they hear their own words. And I'm sure many of you have experienced going to a friend or family when there's a big trauma or a big difficulty in your life and you haven't started talking about it, you always feel that little bit better, provided, of course, it's a really good listener, not someone who turns to you and says, oh, I had that problem myself and oh, it took me 2 years to sort it. You don't need a listener like that, okay? It's only when you've had a really good listener, right? So verbalizing what's going on for us inside gives us the capacity to think more clearly. And I'm not saying you're trying to block people. Of course, they need to vent. They need to get rid of the anger. They need to say what's going on for them. But when it comes to coming to solution stage, you need them to be able to think clearly. And you won't manage to get that done if they're still up at the high anger stage and haven't had an opportunity to speak and to know that you and the other person has heard them. So thought flow tracking brings in increased and new information, as you know, is absolutely necessary because we only take 40 bits per second from everything that is said to us. Missing information is identified and distorted thinking is identified and clarified. Now, what I'm going to show you, I'm just looking at the clock here. I want to show you a quick film. I'm going to go into it now. I'm not going to say all of this and just talk to the translator. I'm just going to say very briefly something about this particular case. It's a workplace case. Both Tom and Kathy, who are the people you will see in the film, were at a workplace event a few months ago. And at that event, they both had a lot to drink. And Tom had always assumed that Kathy had liked him. So going home in the taxi, he put his arm around her. He made some sort of a sexual move, and she stopped the taxi and told him to get out. Okay, so this has been going on 3 months. She actually left that particular department. He was her manager. She left the department, and now she's thinking she should not have had to leave. She wants to come back into the workplace, into that department again. And I'm going to show you the role, a tiny piece of that film, and it's where I'm using thought flow tracking to support Tom in delivering his apology. Okay. Now, I could have said, do you think maybe you might need to apologize, or do you think Kathy might need to hear something from you, Tom? But I didn't have to do in a separate meeting, of course. But I didn't have to do any of that because I literally worked through what I thought was his thinking at the time. So let's have a look. It's just a quick 2 minutes. And now I've got to get you guys out of my way. Sorry. And yeah.
Tom, you mentioned that you felt you might have disrespected Kathy. In what way do you think you may have disrespected her?
I guess across the line. Professionally and personally.
Okay. And when you say cross the line, what do you mean?
guess I disrespected her.
In what kind?
Street, so that's a problem. Well, I guess I'd like, you know, it would be important to me that Kathy would know that nothing like this will happen again. There's absolutely no possibility of that, and also that I would like us to have, you know, hopefully that we can, you know, I'd really like if we could get back to where we were before, because we, you know, I really liked working with her. We worked well. She's great with the team, and you know, it was going somewhere. I guess, Kathy, I really want you to know that this is, from my perspective, this is, you know, closed.
Okay, so did you observe what I did? I asked him about what he had told me. He had mentioned earlier that he felt he disrespected Kathy. Okay, this is in the early, of course, with the joint meeting. I'm not going to say this. If he says to me in the separate meeting beforehand that he disrespected, I'm not going to bring that in and say, you told me at the separate meeting, but it was at the joint meeting he said I disrespected her. And I literally used his words. In what way, you say you felt you disrespected, in what way did you respect? And I left that really long silence for him to get all his thoughts and his words put into a sentence so he'd be able to say what he wanted to say. Okay. And then again, I used his words. He said, I crossed the line. And I asked, what line did he cross? So you're literally using their own words. And that's what makes it so easy, because sometimes, for example, this particular Tom, he said when he woke up in the morning after the office night out, he said in the films, he said he felt mortified. So what I do is I grab that word mortified and I look with it and I work with it. And I say, when you say mortified, tell me more. In what way were you mortified? And how you know, tell me more about the mortified. And what was it about being mortified that really bothered you? And I keep asking, I play with that word. You know, the way a child, a little toddler gets a Christmas present and they aged 2.5 and they end up playing with the box for the day, not the toy that was in the box, and they get into it and they put it on their head and they bang it and they tear it and they do all sorts of things with that box. So you take a word like mortified or take a word like disrespected that he used there and you play with it to get as much information as you can with it. That means I will never need to say to Tom, what might Kathy need to hear from you, which is really all about me saying to him, she needs to hear something. So it's about me being that little bit judgmental and maybe a little bit partial. Okay, so that's the importance of it. Sorry.
Tom,
When to use, I do want to come back to this now. Any stage, any time when you want to get the participant to continue their talking, okay, anytime. And I'm not saying that the feeling questions are never appropriate or the solution. They all are really important questions, but only in that time, okay? So whenever they seem puzzled or they're not able to clarify their thoughts, okay? When they're describing something that seems to really bother them, when they're describing an impact and they're trying to struggle with the response, just leave them with the silence or say, I can see you're struggling, just like that, to just a little nudge. I see you're struggling and a little bit more. And when you note emotions displayed or a word being used with emphasis or repeat it again and again and again, okay? When you're exploring their underlying interests, again, when they're considering options, okay? And what I want you to remember that thought flow tracking is an intervention you can make. It's not intended to replace what you do already. It's an intervention at these important times. Now, I have an hour and 15 minutes, don't I, Tatiana?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I was rushing there for a moment thinking I had to be finished, but I know I'm okay. So we've
it's
done
very
this.
interesting. Yes, and it was such interesting to observe the mediation process. So thank you for this.
Well, they have. I have 11 different films done on my online training, and they're great because the chapter, each of the chapter on the 8 shift thinking questions is some of them are quite long chapters, and what watching the role play does is it brings the chapter alive. It shows you this is how it works. This is what it does. Okay. So if there's any question about that, because I can slow down for a few minutes. If anyone has any question they'd like to ask about what they've just heard, I've shown you the communication context within which we work. I've told you about the need to create a paradigm shift in mediation participants' thinking. I showed you briefly just a window into the S questions model, and then I showed you thought flow tracking, and I showed you an example of when and how you could use it. So will I keep going, or?
Yes, I have one clarification.
Okay,
But maybe,
great.
okay. So I wrote down the important message for myself. We have to create a space for our participants to talk through their thoughts. Yes, and you said that the space to talk what they want to talk, but it's so different from the trial. Yes, because in the trial process, yes, we have only talk about and around about the subject of our claim. So this is a great difference because we have many judges now in this training. So I think they get this difference from mediation process and trial process.
Absolutely. You're looking you are, first of all, if you're the lawyer at the trial, never mind the judge, you want to prove your case right, as does the other side. And the judge is trying to decide, well, who is right and who's wrong? And is there a percentage, 75% right, and the other side is 25% right? And constantly looking for the evidence to prove it, because I mean, the sentence is based on the evidence, isn't it? I don't know, I've never been a judge, I'm not a lawyer, but my guess is it's what you're hearing that allows you as a judge to make a decision as to what needs to happen in this particular case. And you're not asking open-ended questions, you're asking closed questions. Did you do it or did you not do it? You're not asking, how was it that night when you were thinking about doing it? You're not going into those like deeper ways of thinking. But I still think that there's learning in something like this, even for judges in their judging role, outside of anything else. Learning about the amygdala, learning about. I know the question now is asked about how reliable is the witness in a statement, and I had a person on training once, and she and her husband had witnessed a car crash, and the police came and took the statement from each of them separately. And it was a policeman, and the policeman came back to both of them and said, "Are you sure you were in the same car?" Because their statement was so totally different. And you can see now, when each of us takes in information, and we can only absorb 40 bits out of the 11 million bits, how two people could have in an exact opposite view, not an exact opposite, an exact different view to another. And then it'll depend on our values and what we think is important. So if somebody was driving really fast, for example, our values and our experiences, if somebody was driving really, really fast and they could hear the speed of the car, and if their dad or mom had died in a car crash, well, you can imagine how they're going to describe the speed of their car. They're going to say that car smashed. And maybe the other partner is going to say, well, that car hit the other car. So I mean, everything is informed by our beliefs and I don't know, is there a role for judges at all? I'm joking, absolutely joking. But it does beg a lot of questions, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more neuroscience research done on it, because it's just so interesting. So anybody else have a question? Will I keep going at this stage?
I think, yes.
Ole, is it?
Yes, Ole, please.
Yeah. Hello, Gerry. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I would like to understand if I get it correctly. So this is about giving back the person information that we hear, like, for example, just summarizing or something like that. And after that, we ask quite a short, a simple question instead of...
Just before you go, Ole, just about the first bit, we're not giving them back a summary, because a summary is usually something that we compose. We decide what the summary is. We're literally giving them back their own words. Like Tom said, I crossed a line. And I just said, you crossed a line. So
it's like an echo.
It's an echo. It's like looking in a mirror. And you might say, but they'll think you're a parrot, or you're stupid, or you're deaf, or what's wrong with you? They won't. All they will hear, I mean, if you say it like this, you crossed the line, but then it's very different to saying, you crossed the line, Tom. You're saying it in a very quiet way. So they're realizing you're hearing. So sorry, Ole, I interrupted you. I just did want to say it's not a summary. It's the exact words.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very important for me to hear. And we give a short feedback by the words we heard from the person, like an echo, for example. And then we ask a short and simple question, just to push slightly the person to give us more information.
Yeah. And you keep them on their thought track. And actually, the word you've used, echo, is a really, really good word for what I've been trying to say all these years. Echo, it's an echo, because an echo is something that's quiet and gentle, and it's over there, and you're not even too sure from where it came. It's just out there in the sky somewhere. So an echo is lovely. And then just this, and sometimes just the silence. You see the long silence I left with Tom. He was thinking, and he was thinking, what he was doing in his brain was, what words will I use? How will I construct? What sentence will I put it into so that I can get across what I really want her to hear? It's actually that simple, yeah. And I literally just nudging train along the track, okay? But the minute you say, my usual question, what was that like for you? Whoops, I'm gone off the track altogether. Okay, thank you, Ole. I'll keep going. Oh, there's a few more. Can I just go and then take those questions at the end as well? Is that all right? Can I keep going with this part and then take all the questions at the end? All right. And because I think we will have time, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. So the methodology, okay. Now, these are actually, most of these are in chapter 4 of the book. All right. So of course, I'm working on the basis that you haven't read the book. So adhere to mediation principles. And I don't know in mediation school in Ukraine the principles, but for us in Ireland, it's fixed. Respect came in as a new one. So it's the mediation is voluntary, it's that we're impartial, it's confidential, and it's self-determining. They make their own decision. We don't give advice, okay? So if I'm unsure of a question in mediation, what I do is I filter that question through the principles to see, am I breaching any of them? I use appropriate body language. Do you know Columbo, Detective Columbo?
Yes.
He's amazing. He's like Tom and Jerry, the cartoon. He's known all over the world, okay? So you know the way he's really plays dumb and stupid and just one more question. So that's what you're like, okay? Just gentle and curious. Build safety and trust, and you do that. So you don't go straight in and ask these things at the beginning, but you build trust and you make sure that they feel two things. They need to feel important and they need to feel heard. And if you always, both parties, if you always treat people using the principles and that they are both important and heard, you will gain trust, okay? While you're doing thought flow tracking or underlying interests or in some particular at the beginning, you're more process driven than outcome, okay? You can be outcome driven when you've got to the underlying interest, you've got below the positions, and now it's okay, how can this be sorted? Okay, so you're more process driven at that stage. I always hold separate meetings. I know in many countries and in lots of mediators in Ireland, they don't. And my separate meetings can run any time between 1 to 2 hours per person, because that's where I do a huge amount of work, and they're already having paradigm shifts before they even meet each other, because I've allowed them to bring out what's in their mind. And I test questions there, not all, but some, but I won't name those because they're not what we're doing today. So the approach is really important. You need to empower participants to prevent an amygdala hijack. So they really need to feel, again, that they're important and that they're being heard, so that if something aggravates them, they'll be better able to think cognitively rather than having the oxygen and the glucose going back to service their amygdala, and then they can't think straight. In your opening statements, this is what I would always do. I always give parties permission to challenge me if they think I'm being partial to one side or another. And I find when you give people that power, they don't need to use it. It's when you don't give them a power and they begin to feel a little bit disempowered by the process that they feel they have to use it. So if they know they can challenge me anytime they think I'm being partial, then if there's a little bit of partiality that I never intended, but they might pick up, they let it go until it's serious. They know they can do it, okay? I let them know also that they don't have to respond to any of my questions. And that all that means is they don't want to respond to that question at that time, okay? And if I'm asking a hard question, I ask permission. I say, I want to ask you a hard question now, and I'm not too sure how it might be for you. So can I ask it and let me know if it's okay for me to ask that question? No one has ever refused me. And I think that's because you're giving the power back. You know, you're giving it back. You're letting them know it's their process. I'm only here as the person who manages the conversation between them. Timing is really important. Challenging questions, don't ask until after they've vented and when they're a little bit more settled. And always ask, you probably know this, you always ask the complainant first during the story at the beginning, the narrative, at the impact, and at the underlying interest stage. Always ask the complainant first, okay? And I explained that that's my procedure. Now, I've covered a lot of this at this stage. Work with the thoughts inside their heads, not your thoughts, are not what you interpreted from what you saw. And when you're reflecting back, use reporting words. Now, what I mean by that is, if there are two people in the room and party A here has said, it was the worst period of my whole life, I was so depressed. And if I reflect back, it was the worst period of your whole life and you were so depressed, this other party is thinking, God, they have that she has the mediator on her side, okay? But if I say you mentioned it was the worst period of your life, and you said that, I can't remember the other thing, and you said, or you stated, okay, what I'm actually saying to party B is that I'm literally saying what they're saying to me, rather than I'm buying into it as well, all right? Use the passive voice rather than the active, okay? So what I mean by that, I was never any good at grammar. I had to get my son to tell me more about this, because I knew that this was important, but I didn't know how to put it into grammatical language. So instead of saying to one of the parties, when you leveled the neighbor's wall with your digger, I will say, when the wall was leveled with the digger. Can you see the difference in that? One is much, I mean, they're hard questions, but if they're asked properly, it can make a hard question much safer, okay? When reflecting back, separate the deed from the doer. So instead of reflecting back the words used by a party, such as he is rude, okay? What you're going to say is, you mentioned that Mary behaved in a way that you found to be rude. Okay, so not in thought flow tracking, because I'm contradicting myself here. If someone said he's rude, I will just say, tell me more, okay? But outside of thought flow tracking, you mentioned Mary behaved in a way that you found to be rude. So I'm separating the deed from the doer, like the digger. not when you leveled the wall with the digger, but when the wall was leveled with the digger. I'm separating them. And when reflecting back, don't use toxic language. And I don't know if bullying is a really toxic word in Ukraine, but it certainly is in Ireland. And sexual harassment is against the law, or any harassment is against the law. So as soon as one person hears it, the other person goes into a panic. Oh my God, I'm going to be sued. Okay. So when a party says, so you detox toxic words. And if you have a separate meeting, you'll know what the toxic words are that are going to come out, and you're ready. So instead of saying bullying, you're going to say, can you give me an example of when Mary behaved in a way that you didn't like, or you didn't consider to be appropriate, okay? And this question, why? Put it in jail, right? Leave it to researchers and scientists, but not to mediators. When you ask why, what you're doing is you're inviting someone to have to justify what they did or to explain it. And there's many ways of asking why, asking a question without using why. So instead of saying, why did you do it? You could say, what was it that you were thinking that caused you to do that? Do it in a very different way. And when asking a question, and I do this an awful lot, I ask of both parties and I signpost it. What I mean by that is, when asking a question, I'll say, Tom and Kathy, I want to, and I'm signposting it by saying I'm going to do it. Tom and Kathy, I want to ask each of you a question. I want each of you to tell me what's been going on for you. And I want you to start, Kathy, because she's the complainant, okay? I want you to start, and while Kathy is talking, Tom, I really need you to listen, and you might feel like interrupting, but don't worry. I will give you all the time you need to say whatever is in your mind. And then I'm going to ask you, Tom, okay? And while I'm asking Tom, I really need you to listen as well, Kathy, and if you feel like interrupting. So you see what I've done? I've set the stage for the story. I've asked the question of, I've said it to both of them, okay? And I've explained what's going to happen. And that is to prevent my asking Kathy only, Kathy, can you tell me what's going on? And 15 minutes later, I haven't even looked at Tom. Never mind asking, what's your side? What's not, I never ask what side. What's been going on for you or happening for you, Tom? And at this stage, Tom is folding his arms, he's shaking his leg, he's giving massive, massive signs. So that signposting is extremely important, okay? If it's a very challenging question, I'd probably ask it at a separate meeting first to make sure it's safe. It's a safe question. Now, this part, I have no research to back this up other than my own experience. I have found that when someone talks and talks and they leave a minute's silence and then they come in again, quite often, they don't even have to make the silence. They might say, it was such a terrible experience. I'll never forget it. I've never been in a workplace like this before. And when that happened that day, I couldn't believe what he did. And you know, I'm not too sure whether, I think I could have done different myself. Now that's a diamond gem. When someone complains about the other and then says, I'm wondering if there's anything different. Well, you will never get that unless you leave that silence. So every time now you're listening to someone, you wait for their concluding sentence and really listen to it. If you're waiting with a question to ask, you'll be only waiting to see when they're finishing their sentence. But wait for that concluding sentence and listen to it, because it's often the party's own inner conclusion. All right. And it's something great to work on. You mentioned earlier that you were wondering if there was anything you could have done at that time, Kathy. What were you thinking there? So I mightn't use it then immediately, but I'll certainly pop it into my pocket and I will bring it out later on, okay? So catch all of those gems, as I say. Any gems you get, you know, the odd times when you might say, and you know, it wasn't like that at the beginning. It was really great at the beginning. We really got on so well. We were good friends. And then this happened and then la, 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 okay? So put it in your pocket. And at some stage later say, you were both mentioned at the beginning, this worked well. Can you tell me a little bit more? And the purpose for that little intervention is that I want them to see, you know, the angel has a halo and the devil has horns. And usually each person comes in thinking they have the halo and the other has the horns. So I'm trying to get them to think that at one stage they both saw each other wearing the halo at one stage. I'm bringing them back. And this is, again, I have no research for this, but it's from training people. I've seen how it works. If you're stuck and you don't know what to ask next, which happens so often when you're learning, especially when you're learning to be a mediator, is summarize. So that summary, it's good for them because they're getting everything kind of brought down in, oh, so this is where we are now. So this happened, and then that happened, and then blah, blah, and then we heard, and then you said that, and blah, blah. So they're getting a summary to have some sit back and reflect on it. But for you, as you're summarizing in your head, at the end of that summary, I can guarantee, if you get out of your own way, you will know exactly what question to ask next. It's a really great trick, all right? And then, minimize feelings, not feelings, the word feelings. Okay, some people, I don't know, in Ukraine, but I hear, if you mention the word feelings, some people are, just don't go there. I don't want to get in many women as well, okay? So instead of asking, how did you feel? Ask, how was that for you? Or what was that like for you? Or how did it impact you? Just stay away from feeling. And here there's another sentence, which is the worst ever. It's, when Mary did that, how did that make you feel? Now that, if I ask that as a mediator, I'm saying it's Mary's fault. So lose that, cross it out. In fact, I think I'm going to put a line through it on the PowerPoint when we're finished. Cross that one out. When you're asking a question, you might say, you know, it all worked very well at the beginning, but, or you mentioned that you would do this, but. Don't say but, ever. Or don't say however, ever. Replace it with and. Put an and where you'd normally do but or however. Replace us with me, and I often see me. Can you tell, there's two parties, there's me. And I turn to one and I say, can you tell us what all that was like for you? Now, what am I, if I use the word us? Can you tell us? What they're very subtly picking up is, can you tell me and that other party, because I'm on that other party's side, okay? So just say, can you say, or can you tell me, all right? And replace the we with the you. And that's about giving responsibility back to the participants. I hear people saying, we've done that now, and we need to look at this next, and we need to find some solutions, okay? And by my saying we, I'm saying, I'm responsible too, but remember, I'm not. It's self-determination. I'm not responsible. So say you. Where do you need to go next? What do you guys need to do to resolve it? And sometimes when it comes to option stage, and somebody might say, look, if she did that, if so-and-so, if A did that for you, what would you do? And I'm saying, don't say would, say could. I don't know if this means anything in Ukrainian, but the would is you would do it. The could is you might consider doing it. So you're not putting them into a box already. You're saying, if Mary did that, what could you do, or what could you offer? All right. Now this is really important. People often say, yeah, Gerry, but what happens if you push people to a place where you're touching on some past trauma? And of course, this can happen because you have no idea what's going on in anybody's head or where they're coming from. If you have inadvertently touched on past trauma, acknowledge it. It's difficulty, very quietly and very gently. So you can say, I notice, or I've observed, or I see that this has brought something up for you that has maybe been difficult. And leave a 1 or 2 second silence. And then ask, would you like a break, or would you like to continue? Okay. And later, I will ask that person, how are they? I won't let them go home with whatever came up. I'll ask them, how are they? I won't give them advice, but I'll ask, have they received any supports around this issue? Okay. And I'll also check on the other party, because depending, if the other party seems to have been really affected by what came out, then I'll ask them to, in a separate meeting, how are they after that was said? And I'll ask each of them what they need to be able to do to work through the conflict issues safely when we come back again. Okay? And if you may know this one, beware of risk aversion. If one party one party is looking for €1,000 from the other and receives an offer of €75,000, don't say they're offering you 25,000 less than that for which you asked. Say you're getting an offer of 75,000. Can you see how the framing of that could really input into the type of reaction they could have? And any statement you want to make, like, I don't think that would work, you can't do that. How might the other person respond if you do or say that? Ask a question, turn a statement into a question. How might the other person respond? Or marks out of 10, might this solve the issue, or do you think somebody might walk out, or would it meet all your needs? All right. And that's it. They are the different modules, but I'm going to come back to you now for questions. And I have, 3 or 4 minutes left, I think, is it? So,
Yes,
people had questions.
yes, we saw such people. Ella, are you with us? I saw you raising hands.
Да, Тетяна, дуже дякую вам за можливість задати запитання. Я в захваті від нашого заходу, і це було дуже цікаво і корисно почути. У мене коротке запитання. Чи є у вас якийсь універсальний лайфхак запитання тоді, коли ви не знаєте, що запитати, який, коли ви відчуваєте труднощі сформулювати запитання, вам
Questions, and you need time. Why am I asking? I'm not a mediator, but I'm trying for a long time to join this profession as a professional judge. And during simulations, I saw that all of a sudden I don't know what to ask the other party as a mediator. Or is there a universal approach when you don't know what to do? What should I ask?
Okay, besides leaving the room, I think summarize what you've heard. I had mentioned that. Summarize what you've heard, and it will all become clear to you. So I'm hearing you say that, la la la. It will be, the question will come. And if you're not sure what to ask, there is nothing wrong with being human and saying, I really want to learn more, or I want to hear more from you. But I don't know what to ask. What could I ask that would help me to learn more? Just say it. Or go to the bathroom and come back later. That's what I often do myself. I go to the bathroom with my S-questions model and I have a look. At least I used to do it when I was stuck at the beginning. So summarize, ask them, just say, I'm not too sure what to ask so that I learn more from you or understand you more. Can you tell me what I could ask, or is there anything else you feel you need to tell me? Or take a break and come back. You're right, Ella. Okay. So is there another question?
Yes, I saw a raised hand from Elena Domina. Elena, are you with us now? Can you join with your question? Because you want to ask something. Okay.
Yes, I would like, yes, hi, I would like to ask a question. My question was, first of all, hi from Galway. It's very interesting.
You're in Galway.
Yeah, and you are in Dublin, probably, yeah?
No, I'm down. I'm directly south from you. I'm in County Kerry in the Dingle Peninsula. Right by the sea.
Okay. So for me, it's very important to understand when I start to work with the couples, and there are many Ukrainian couples in Ireland who are in the process of separation right now.
Yes.
And I have a few cases, and when we are stuck and we don't know what to do because we are still under temporary protection, and people can't do it through legal procedures, really. and they try to negotiate between themselves. But when we feel that that you are stuck, and the circumstances why I mentioned temporary protection and so on are really severe, how you take yourself out when they want to continue, but you personally, when the couple, for example, or the parties of the conflict want to continue, but you are stuck as a mediator, you don't know what else to propose them.
Well, yeah, and it's not your role to propose, is it really? But they're stuck because they can't go through legal proceedings, is it?
They can't go through any procedures. They can't go. They just feel that they're in a dead corner. They couldn't agree between each other. And men constantly say, okay, I will come back to Ukraine, and they have like a toddler of 18 months, and lady is desperate. So it's like that corner.
Do you work as a mediator with them? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. It's not our role. It's our role to give them the space whereby they can really say what's going on, not the positional level, at the real deep, what is happening for them here. Good process, a fair process, and we bring them through to their conclusions. If they are unable to come to agreement, I know I always say, you go to bed at night time and you don't say, oh my God, that mediation failed. I'm a failure. I'm a no good mediator. You go to bed at night and you ask yourself, did I give the best process possible? Did I ask enough questions? Did I make them feel safe? And did I allow them to open up? And if you did, you can do nothing because it's a self-determining process. You can't make a decision and you can't give them advice, Elena. And I know that must be really difficult because there are probably so many people that if they were back in Ukraine, they would be up. And I suppose the most you could do is work with them to create the present time manageable. So forget about the separation, forget about all of this. You're going to do it when you get back to Ukraine, but just for here in Ireland now, for just the next 3 months, what could you offer to each other? What could you do? And we'll meet again in 3 months. That's the only thing I can offer.
Mm-hmm. So thank you very much. So you just give them space to communicate in a mutual meeting, and then you leave them for certain months and let them come back to you. Not in a week.
No. Get them. Ask them if do they want to develop a plan for 2 months, next week, whatever the time is. And quite often I found when people just develop a short plan, because here it might be waiting for court, waiting for accounts, it could be something like that. When you give them a plan, it could be for Christmas. Would you like to do a plan for Christmas? And they often come back after the Christmas and they say, that worked really well. So now we're separated, but we're still separating, but it worked well. And that might help, Elena. But other than that, I can't offer anything except to wish the war was over.
Thank you very much, because we did 5 or 6 separate meetings, 1 joint meeting, and again 2 separate meetings.
So you've worked hard. Well, if you think you've given them everything, then it's not your role to fix it, and you really need to know that it's not your role to fix it. That's their issue.
And the final maybe note.
You should go to the court. If mediation
that's in Ireland for us, for Ukrainians, it's not an issue because
they're here under a different
system. It doesn't work. Yeah,
it's a protective presence, or it's not. They're not here as citizens.
And
but
also,
I'm sure it could happen privately, but then the divorce is going to be through the Irish courts. So we better leave that question. But I just remember, you're not the person who fixes it.
And maybe, sorry for the very last. Maybe it will be interesting for others. I feel that they meet with us, especially men, because he doesn't believe in therapy, despite we recommend him, because he had like symptoms which he verbalized, but he doesn't believe in therapy. But he meet with us, me and my Ukrainian co-mediator, because he feel comfortable with us, and we feel that we are doing a kind of support.
And
not
then you
therapeutic.
need to be really careful that you do not act as a therapist, because it's a different hat, and
Okay,
you
I
could end up
understand.
getting sued when you get back to Ukraine.
Okay,
Okay, all right, Elena, enjoy Galway.
thank you.
All right.
Yeah, same.
Tatiana, any more? I have no problem staying, but I know I'm past other people's time, but I'm quite happy to stay another few minutes anyway.
Thank you so much. I will ask in Ukrainian. Можливо, є запитання.
Dear colleagues, I see no questions in chat. Do anyone has questions? You can voice them, because our interpreters can interpret that. Olga, have a question.
Okay, hi, Olga.
Greetings. I will be speaking in Ukrainian. I'm grateful for this wonderful educational event, and thank you, Ms. Gerry, for those insights which we have heard, and the information we had learned. My question is, I think many people will be interested in it. Today we considered the case, the textbook case about when there are two children in trains, they start playing, and we ask questions and hear answers, and that's how we learn the reframing and change of paradigm when we hear about significant events and changes us. What do we do if we hear a normal reply? That's my children, they will behave the way they want, because that's how I bring them up. How should we respond, not just as a mediator? It is important for a mediator, but for communicator or usual people who sees such rudeness and it is articulated. Those are my children. They behave the way they want. If there is
I think
any...
that's a question that's way outside. I used to deliver mediation training, but it was not mediation, parenting classes way back in the 80s, but it was 18 hours. It was 18 hours, so I couldn't answer a question like that in a few minutes. But I think the purpose for that was to show you that by Steve Covey asking the man a question, he got a huge amount of information that he didn't know already. So that's I won't go into parenting. So sorry about that, Olga.
Thank you for your honesty. Gerry, so now we need to summarize, yes, I think, and because really we need to get the final meeting. So I have wrote down a lot of advice for myself, and I want to share this with my colleagues and with you. So act like and as Columba, yes, with this question. Act, yes, like Columba,
absolutely,
yes, with these questions, it's great advice. Never ask why, because when you ask why, you give someone the right to justify, yes. And if you are stuck, just summarize. Do not push parties past their comfort. Minimize asking about feelings. And I think
sorry, it's not to minimize asking about feelings. It's about using the word feelings.
Word feelings. Oh, okay.
It's that word, because sometimes people get very allergic to it. But you could say, so what's it been like for you, or how did it impact for you, and what was going on for you after that? but it's just the word feelings. It's really important to get actually below the feelings, but it's the word. Counselors use it
Yes,
a
thank you
lot.
for such
Mediators who were originally
So-
counselors use it a lot.
yes.
Sorry,
So,
I interrupted you.
words are matter. Yes.
Words matter hugely, yeah, but more than anything, body language. I mean, you know the percentages, don't you? The 55%. And when I speak to someone, 55% of the meaning that you take from what I said is based on just my body language, the physical body language, and 38% of the meaning you take is from the tone of voice that I use, and only 7% of the meaning is conveyed through the words that I choose. That's my body language, my argumentative tone of voice, but the words only count for 7%. So yes, choose your words carefully, but if you choose your words really carefully and you deliver those words in an aggressive way or a clipped tone of voice, then it doesn't matter what the words were. The meaning is being taken from your body language and your tone of voice.
Yes, Gerry, I want to thank you on behalf of Dobrosud Law Association, and I want to ask my colleague from Ukrainian Mediation Academy, Svetlana Sergeyeva, to join us. Svetlana, are you here? Are you here with us?
Дякую, Тетяно. Я хотіла б
Thank you, Tetiana. I would like, on behalf of Ukrainian Academy of Mediators,
раді підтримати ініціативу
We
наших
were
партнерів.
very happy to support the initiative of our colleagues and in terms of the project EU Consent. Gerry, we are very grateful to you because it's already the second time since the beginning of the war in 2021 in Ukraine. You're sharing your experience, your knowledge with us, with Ukrainians, and the topic you were talking about today. It's very important, not just for the judges, lawyers, prosecutors, and mediators, but it's very useful for everyone in our everyday life. And if this process of putting questions becomes more conscious, it has a certain methodology. We also can count on a paradigm shift, on the shift in the method of our thinking, and we are very grateful for your today's time with us. And we will be happy to see you again.
Thank you. And it's no, not Tatiana, it's Tatiana that Svetlana works with as well. And I think I've had numbers of students or people from your school, but not necessarily students, who've come on my online training as well as a guest. So it's always lovely to work with you. And I'm wondering, I did take a screenshot, but without permission, I know, but I want to ask permission now if I could use that screenshot on LinkedIn. Would that be okay with people? If you want to get back to me on that, Tatiana, or is there anybody there now who would like to not have their photo on LinkedIn? If they want to turn off your camera, and if you want it, I can do it again. Just let me know.
Okay.
We're all right.
And I will, yes.
Okay.
And I also want to thank our participants for great questions for this time. And to you, Gerry, thank you so much for this lecture, for your knowledges.
You're welcome. And the translator. The translator worked hard. Where is she gone?
Yes.
Yeah, she did work hard.
Yes, of our interpreters. Thank you.
So thank you all very, very much indeed. And Olga, I hope you get the children sorted, and I hope everything goes well in Galway. And I thank you so much. So take care. I hope you'll all be safe. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.